Hey guys, welcome to a new movie review. Today I'm going to be telling you about a new documentary that came out earlier in the summer to iTunes. It never really got a theatrical release, unfortunately, but it seems to be doing pretty well on iTunes. I've seen it's made quite a few thousands of dollars already, and it's only been roughly a month since iTunes has offered it for rental, and I guess they're already offering it to people buy it and keep it on their iTunes account. This film is called Video Games the Movie, and it is a documentary that Zach Braff, who was a part of Oz the Great and Powerful, he recently directed a film called Wish I Was Here, which I guess really didn't do that well. But he was one of the producers behind this film, and I guess the guy who directed it really wanted to make this film about the history of video games and kind of everybody's perspective on it, everybody how they grew up with it, and the people who basically got this video game thing started, got it created, got it out to the general public. Even though it was expensive back then, still they were able to trim it down at least by a few dollars or so to be able to make people make it more affordable for them. And so this movie is all about that. The video games, the movie is all about. It's this documentary where we get the history behind video games, how it got started, what got the idea for it, what got the idea for all these games that came out throughout the years. What kind of got it popular with the general public? The crash that happened in the early '80s, Super Mario Brothers and the NES system bringing up the popularity of video games back in the mid '80s, and kind of how it just kind of grew from there, and kind of how people who don't even normally play video games are, how they're a part of it now, and the video games used to be just for gamers, and now it's for everybody. They found a way to uh, make it bigger than they ever thought it would. One of them even said, movies are video games to the point now where they basically are interactive movies. They've been able to make these things into interactive movies now because it's just that advanced and high tech. So, like I said, video games the movie, it's all about, the beginning, the middle, and the end, where we currently are with video games. The film covers all those things, and it also covers, the perspectives of certain celebrities like Zach Braff, like Sean Astin, who also narrated the movie. A couple of other people were in this too, but notably Al Alcorn, who was basically the game designer of Pong, and Nolan Bushnell, who basically got video games started in a small laboratory somewhere in this electronics place, and was able to basically figure out how to put a interactive game onto a small portable system, and make several versions of that so that people around the world will be able to play this in their homes. Um, so, like I said, video games, the movie covers all that stuff. So, for my positives and negatives of this documentary, I thought it was very interesting and informative. It definitely, like for example, did you know the Xbox name came from something that Microsoft was starting up at the time called XDirect, which was basically a way of getting more advanced game software. For you to have more access to that before starting up a new game, so you didn't have to worry about installing further stuff. Um, so small stuff like that, stuff that I didn't know before watching the movie. A lot of that stuff came up. Even if you've seen a lot of this stuff on G4, G4 Tech TV, they showed a lot of history of game episodes on the show Icons back when that was going on. There's actually some information here that was not shown on that kind of stuff. So very interesting, very informative. The film does a very good job with all that stuff. Video games, the movie also has an interesting G4 vibe. It does very much remind me of those old Icons episodes that G4 had talking about the history of gaming or the history of a gaming franchise. I really like that vibe that Video Games, the movie, was able to accomplish with that. Nolan Bushnell, who basically got video games up and going. I like how the film starts with him and it ends with him. It starts with him in the way that, what got video games started, what got the idea going, how was he able to get this out to the general public, and it ends with basically his current thoughts of, where video games are, where he thinks they're going to go, and what he thinks that they've done for society so far since their creation. So it was very good to see. It was very interesting to see Nolan Bushnell's opening and close take on the whole video games art form that's still going on today. I liked how the film also shows the cultural impacts behind games. The film also gets to the topic of, how people, from World of Warcraft and EverQuest and things that, it's this forever going thing that really has no limit levels, like there's no, you get to level 8 and then the game is done kind of thing. And, kind of how some couples, some married couples who are still around today, how they've met through these games and had a marriage and kind of have a special night of the week where they dedicate that night to video games since that's how they met and things like that. The film really goes into detail how video games are not only just an art form or a pastime art form or form of entertainment, but it kind of how it kind of made us come together more as a community in a way, and kind of how some people around the planet have basically met their significant other through this art form as well. The film also shows, or I should say, it tells, or I should say, just allows these people to do this. Basically, allows celebrities to share their gaming memories growing up. Zach Braff specifically, shows up a lot throughout the film, and he shares kind of his childhood memories he had with gaming and kind of how even to this day he just really appreciates the art form, really sees how some people use a lot of their free time for this art form and things like that. It shows Alcorn and Nolan Bushnell and some other like Sean Astin, things like that, kind of how they grew up with this and how they feel that kind of impacted them later in life in a good way. The film also has some rare retro gaming archive footage of like old tournaments, the release of a new arcade at a local arcade, like the people's first reaction to Pac-Man when that first came out and things like that. A lot of stuff that I bet would be really hard to find on YouTube and things of that nature. And I think it's really cool how that kind of video footage is still around, that somebody somewhere has that content. And we're able to see kind of how this rare retro gaming footage is still around, and we're still able to see kind of the original reactions to some of this original games that still live on to this day in a way. For the negatives of video games in the movie, since it actually is not quite a perfect documentary quite yet, I felt the film needed to cover some more content when it comes to handheld gaming and PC gaming. In a way, the film kind of completely goes past those. The film's more so about console gaming and kind of how video games got started and kind of where video games are today and where people are hoping it's going to go. But the film really just flies on by the handheld gaming market and the PC gaming market, and both of those I would say are pretty big to the console market, and it's just kind of too bad that this film didn't acknowledge both the handheld and PC gaming market, because let's face it, the Game Boy was huge, and it's there's still tons of handheld gaming going around now, and that would have not been possible if the Game Boy wasn't ever successful. So I really would have liked to have seen more about handheld gaming and PC gaming covered in this film. The film also has a very bad sense of structure. It really is kind of all over the place as far as what it wants to be about and where, certain things are placed. One second you're hearing about the beginning of video games and where we currently are. The next second you're hearing about some guy who is talking about how video games saved him while he was in the hospital, and it just goes way too back into the past, or it goes way too far back into the present, and there's really no clear transitions between those ideas. And like I said, I don't think the film really knew what it wanted to be. That it just wanted to be a historical piece on where video games have been and where we are with them. Uh, After a while, it just really didn't know what it wanted to be. It just kind of briefly covered the cultural impact of it and other sides besides the history behind gaming, but there really was no sense of structure. Everything was just kind of thrown in there without really a sense of transition and structure, and that really kind of bothered me while watching the movie. I also feel video games the movie is about 15 to 20 minutes too long. It kind of overstays its welcome, I would say. It just a lot of footage I think could have been cut. I did hear somewhere that there was tons of hours of footage, I guess, that they captured for the movie, and obviously they only kept an hour and 41 minutes of it. Either way, it was just a little bit too long. Maybe save that for some other film project purpose later on, maybe, because this film really felt like it was about 15 to 20 minutes too long to me. This film also has a problem of it being a little bit too irrelevant here within the next few years. The video game industry is very fast moving, its technology is always improving, and I would say maybe by about 4, 5, 6 years at the latest, a lot of the technology that they covered within the present day is going to be outdated. So when people go back and watch this several years later, it's already going to be outdated, and it's like I said, it goes back to who is this film marketed for. So just a few little nitpicks I had, but overall, guys, I give Video Games the Movie a 8.5 out of 10. I think it is a very good documentary. It just has a lot of structuring issues. It really just flew on by handheld gaming and PC gaming. That's really too bad because both of those things are just as important as the console gaming portion of the film. It was about 15-20 minutes too long. I would have preferred a shorter cut of this film. And like I said, this film has a problem of it not really standing the test of time too well. 4, 5, 6 years down the road, this film is basically going to become irrelevant to a lot of people, and they're either going to have to remake it or it's just doesn't really going to have a point anymore. So, Video Games the Movie, 8.5 out of 10 for me. It's pretty good. Don't expect a masterpiece. If you want a really good documentary, I would highly recommend Life Itself. It's about the life of Roger Ebert and his impact on film criticism. Much better documentary, I think. But nonetheless, if you like video games, if you have a huge passion for it, you might just love Video Games the Movie. I really enjoyed it, but at the same time, I've noticed some flaws with it while watching it. So Video Games the Movie, pretty good. See it if you love video games. If you're not big into video games, maybe you don't have to see this one so much.